Hello everyone, I'm Patrick from Road Less Traveled, and today we're going to look at how the Garmin Edge Explorer 2 can be used as your companion on an e-bike to explore trails anywhere. Along with Strava, you can become a trail expert in just a few days. I've been putting this Garmin Edge Explorer 2 through its paces for the last couple of years, and it's really helped me explore trails that I never would have found any other way. And I found a way to use Garmin and Strava to uncover trails that you're really not going to find on any maps, but they could be some of the best trails you'll ever ride. First of all, I'm not sponsored by Garmin or Strava, so these are my unbiased opinions. If you like what you see, please hit a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get into the review. So the Garmin Edge Explorer is at the lower range by price of the Garmin GPS products. I really got this because I didn't want to spend a lot for all the other functions. It has less memory. It probably connects to less devices. I'm looking at the lists here. I mean, it doesn't have Wi-Fi. You can't load your training plans on it. What I wanted it for was strictly navigation, but it did come with a few other functions that I use that I think are really important, and they were a bit of a bonus. I'll get into those after I go through how to create a route and how to use it for navigation. Okay, I'm here in front of the computer and I pulled up Strava, so I'm going to show you how I use Strava to find trails in almost any location I go, and I even use it right where we live to find some great trails, some of which you can't find on any other maps. And so what I do here is I pull up maps, which is at the top of the menu, and then it for some reason defaults to where I used to live. So I type in the area I'm going to ride. In this case, I'll put in Truckee, and it pops right to it. I will then zoom in. You can see you've got these options up above. What type of event or activity you're doing. Right now it's selected as mountain bike ride, but you've got a lot of choices here. I'm going to leave it at mountain bike ride because for mountain biking or e-biking, there's a lot more mountain bikes out there than are e-bike. There are e-bikes, and so I find more trails if I just stick to mountain bike ride. Heat maps, I can select the global heat map, which is everybody, or I can add my heat map to that. I won't do that at this point, but I can add my heat map to the map as well. And then I'm going to show you what segments does here in a minute after I zoom in. You can kind of look, this is the whole Truckee area, and you can kind of see the darker lines are the items that are part of the heat map that show you where people have been riding. I'm going to zoom into this area because this is a neat area to show. It's an area in sort of the southeast part of Truckee. You can see Truckee over here up on the upper left. I zoom in to this location. If you were to go to Trail Forks and look at this whole location that's sort of at the center of my map here right now, there would be no trails. And that's because these are quote unquote non-sanctioned trails. But there's a lot of riding that's in that area, and there's a lot of good riding that's in that area. In this case, it's kind of intermediate advanced riding. But let's see what happens, because this is what I do when I'm setting up a route. I'll look and I'll see there's a lot of trails, but I'll say, okay, how many people are riding those and how popular are they? And one way to figure that out is to go to segments and click segments on. And you've got a lot of choices here. I'm just going to leave them all clicked as any. Done. And look at that. Look at the number of segments in this area. And if I zoom in, there's going to be more. But there are a huge number of segments. What that means is people have thought enough about this area to decide they wanted to time their ride. So there's a lot of downhill segments because people like to time their ride on downhill. And this is a neat thing to look at. You can also see uphills on this. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And I already know that this whole area is kind of a downhill area. It starts on the lower right and goes to the upper left as a downhill. And I can tell that if I just pick a trail. Let's pick a trail called Coupe de Gras downhill. And I click on that. I say view segment. And it's going to show me that segment. It's also going to show me the elevation. I can see the start of the segment is at 7,700 feet in elevation, and it goes down all the way to just over 6,500 feet. So it's a pretty decent length, 2 miles, 1,166 feet. And then you can look in more detail about this. You can see, okay, a lot of people ride this. 773 people have logged times in Strava. That's a pretty good number. If I just look at this year, 58 people have logged rides in that area. So I can see it's active this year. This is an important thing to do. This year for me, I click that in the early part of the year. If there's nobody that's ridden it, it usually means there's still snow or it's muddy or the conditions aren't really good, or maybe they've closed the trail. So it's always a good idea to click that. There's another thing you can do to investigate the trails, and that is to look at all these riders. And there's a lot of riders in here, and this guy Mitch Mason, don't know him, he's the top rider. He's got the best time, so they put him at the top. But if you click on the date that he rode, which I'm going to do right now, you get to see his entire ride. And this is kind of neat because now I can see what his route was. Not only do I know, in blue here, that's the segment, not only do I know a neat segment to take, I now know I have a route to follow. If I want to start in this spot where this green dot is, which is where he started his, I could do this route. And it looks like he came this way, he came up this trail, went down the segment we're talking about, did a little loop down here, came over, went right back up the same way, and came down another trail. So that's important because you can see now this is a popular way for riders to go up the trail. A lot of these trails, you don't want to ride up them. They're really made for going down. And so if you follow what other people do, particularly the top rider, by going up the way they went up, now you're doing what the locals are doing. So I'm going to go back. Okay, we're back here looking at all of these segments. So now that I know where I want to ride, I have a couple choices. I could do what I mentioned earlier and pick a route that I kind of like. Let's go to a different one this time and say it's Lower Dirty Harry or Upper Dirty Harry. I'll pick Upper Dirty Harry. I view that segment and I go back down to the leaderboard and I pick maybe a rider that's not the top rider. So I find a different one and I can kind of look at where they rode from and to. And I see, oh, they started right over where I want to start, right over by North Star. I think I'm just going to do their ride. And if I want to, and I want to do their ride, then I'm going to go to this little button right here and say Save Route. And it pulls the route up. Now I have two options. I can modify the route by clicking on these buttons here and moving them. Or I can just save it as is, go up to here, save route, pick a name, say Patrick's Ride, and I can add a description I want and save to my routes. Now it's in my dashboard. Okay, the other choice I have is to go back to this map with all the routes and go up to the right hand side and say Create Route. Now, it's not going to show me all the things I was showing before, so I'm going to have to go over here and say, show me the segments and make this a mountain bike ride. Now I can see all this, well, a lot of the segments. Not as nice of a map as I had before, but now I can go to this area where I was saying there's a parking lot. I can start creating a route. I'm not going to go into all the detail on that, but you get the idea. You can start clicking on the directions I want to go. I'm going to go up the road here. And it's actually taking me up the way I should go up. Pretty good about that. And I'm going to come up this direction. It's a road. People are following the road to get up here. And I won't go through the whole thing, but let's just make a short route here and go right back down to, sometimes you got to make sure it takes you the way you want to. So I click intermediate points, and here I am. And I get back to the parking lot, go back up to save route, new Patrick's route. You'll notice up in the right hand side there's a star. When you hit that star, that's important for later when we talk about your Garmin. But I'm going to save that to my routes. When that star is clicked, I can always click it later. Now, when I go back to my dashboard, I can go to my routes, and I'll see right at the top the 2 new routes I just created right here. Now we're going to look at how to get those onto your Garmin. I have Garmin Connect loaded onto my iPhone. So I'm going to click on the Garmin Connect app, open it up, and you'll see in the lower right hand corner there's a selection I can make for more. I'm going to hit that. Then I'm going to go to settings down here on the bottom and look at connected apps. It's right in the middle. You can see Strava listed there. If I click on that, you can see, you can make sure that your Strava account is linked to your Garmin account. Once you've done that, this lower box should be selected, courses. That will make sure that all the courses you set up in Strava are loaded onto your Garmin device when you sync them. So this is my Garmin Edge Explorer. As you can see, I turned it on, and once I synced it, I've got the course right here. All I have to do is click on that, and it pops up, and then I hit ride, and I'm ready to go. So what's super cool about the Garmin and the Edge Explorer is when you're on a route, it will give you turn-by-turn directions. So as you're coming up to a turn, it will give you an audible beep, and you look down and you can see how soon that's coming. It'll even list on your computer, if you can see it while you're riding, the name of the trail that you're headed on, if it happens to be a listed trail. So a couple other things about the Garmin Edge Explorer that I really didn't expect, but I'm using. And I mentioned this earlier in the video. They were bonus for me because I didn't buy it for the purpose, but one of them is safety. It has crash detection on it. And this is something I've used. You can turn it off because it does have false alarms, but it gives you about 20 seconds to respond to it. But what it does, if you're riding down the trail and you're hitting a lot of bumpy sections, this is sort of the way the algorithm on the computer works, it's detecting that. If you come to an immediate stop, it sees that as a crash. And that's usually what happens when you crash. You go through some violent action and then everything stops. And for me, that happened. If you watch one of my earlier videos about the crash that I had, this thing went off, and when it goes off and you don't cancel it, it will notify your contacts. If you put them in your Garmin by phone number, it will notify them that you've been in a crash. And it does that through your phone if it's connected. If you're not connected, then it probably won't. Definitely won't. The second item that was a bit of a bonus, because I have an e-bike, and I bought this before I had the e-bike, because I have an e-bike, the Garmin connects to the Shimano app. So if you have a Shimano Steps application on your e-bike, will connect through Bluetooth to this device. And it's pretty cool because the computers on your e-bike are pretty small, and it's sometimes hard to look down and maybe see your speed or how much battery or range you have left, or maybe even which mode you're in, although that's usually pretty obvious. But if you have that displayed on your Garmin, and this is a relatively large screen compared to what you have on your e-bike, you're going to see that pretty easily. So that's a pretty cool feature that I've just started using. So the Garmin Edge Explorer with Strava has been a great tool for me, and I've used it to really get to know the trails in my local area, and there's a lot of them in the Tahoe, Truckee area, and I've become pretty expert at where these trails are. But I've gone to other areas nearby or even in other states, and just using the techniques I showed you in this video gave me some insight about the trails that maybe even some locals don't know about. Until next time, enjoy. Maybe I'll see you out on some of your trails.